Would somebody start the bidding at $750, please?
How do we know it's not a fake? It looks like a fake.
Well, one thing we know, you're no fake. You're a genuine idiot.
Thank you.
It's the spy thriller that defined the genre. Suave men, dangerous women, and one of the most iconic chases in cinema history. But behind Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece, North by Northwest, 1959, lies a world of secrets, accidents, and Hollywood chaos that no one saw coming.
Look, do you know this man?
Fact 1.
I know, I look vaguely familiar.
Yes.
Alfred Hitchcock didn't plan to make North by Northwest. It started as a prank. During a lunch with an MGM executive, he joked about a spy mistaken for someone who doesn't exist. The idea was never meant to be serious, but MGM loved it. They offered Hitchcock a huge budget and total creative control if he made the joke real. Screenwriter Ernest Lehman was hired and told, "Write the Hitchcock movie to end all Hitchcock movies." The goal wasn't just suspense, it was style, wit, and spectacle. Hitchcock said, "If it's logical, it's boring." Every scene was designed to be slightly surreal, like a waking dream of paranoia. The story made no real sense, and that was the point. Lehman called it a nightmare that smiles. From that accidental idea came one of Hollywood's greatest thrillers, and that spontaneous inspiration would soon lead to one of the strangest creative feuds of Hitchcock's entire career. Fact 2.
Suppose I tell you I not only know the exact time you're leaving the country tonight, but the latitude and longitude of your rendezvous and your ultimate destination.
Director Alfred Hitchcock and screenwriter Ernest Lehman started as partners and ended as enemies. Their creative sessions were legendary shouting matches. Lehman would storm out, screaming that he'd quit. Hitchcock would quietly sip brandy and say, "He'll be back." They argued over everything. Dialogue, pacing, even the color of Cary Grant's tie. Hitchcock wanted the movie to feel like a roller coaster. Lehman wanted it to feel like a chess game. The tension, ironically, created perfection. Each argument added layers of irony and wit. Lehman later admitted, "He drove me mad, but he made me better." Hitchcock loved tormenting his collaborators. It was how he extracted genius. He'd deliberately make impossible demands, then watch them solve them. The two men finally made peace at the premiere when Lehman saw the audience screaming and laughing exactly as Hitchcock predicted. Their chaos had birthed a masterpiece. But that madness was nothing compared to the insanity of the film's most famous scene, the crop duster attack. Fact 3. At the time, Hollywood thrillers were full of dark alleys and shadowy villains. Hitchcock wanted the opposite. Suspense in broad daylight. He told Lehman, "Let's put Cary Grant in the middle of nowhere and have nothing happen until everything happens." The now iconic crop duster scene broke every rule. It took 4 days to film and cost over $80,000, a fortune in 1958. The location was real farmland outside Bakersfield, California. Grant spent hours running through real dirt as a real plane swooped inches above him. The explosions of dust and fuel were triggered live, not added later. Crew members hid behind hay bales while cameras rolled. Hitchcock said, "It's terror under a blue sky." The simplicity, one man, one field, one plane, became legendary. Critics called it the greatest chase scene ever filmed. And while audiences were amazed, the actors were terrified because Cary Grant wasn't supposed to be anywhere near those propellers. Fact 4.
What do we do?
Climb down.
We can't.
Here they come, we have no choice.
Cary Grant, the epitome of cool, had no idea what was going on. Halfway through filming, he pulled Hitchcock aside and said, "Hitch, I don't understand this script." Hitchcock smirked and replied, "Neither do I." The script was intentionally confusing, a parody of Cold War paranoia. Grant often asked, "Who am I running from?" And Hitchcock would say, "Everyone." He didn't even know how the movie ended until the last week of shooting. Despite the chaos, Grant delivered one of his most controlled performances. His confusion actually helped the character. An ordinary man trapped in extraordinary madness. Critics later said it was the perfect use of bewilderment. Grant called it a movie where logic goes to die. But that confusion only made audiences lean closer. Every twist felt both ridiculous and thrilling. And just when Grant thought the absurdity had peaked, Hitchcock forced him to shoot one of the weirdest love scenes ever made. Fact 5.
Now, don't you think it'll be a better idea if you stayed in my hotel room while I located him for you, brought him to you?
The romantic train sequence between Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint looks elegant, but it was pure innuendo. Hitchcock had been battling censors for decades, so he found clever ways to sneak sexuality into his films. When the couple's lips meet, the camera cuts to a train entering a tunnel. One of cinema's most famous visual jokes. The studio's censorship board nearly banned the shot, calling it indecent. Hitchcock refused to remove it, claiming it was a metaphor for transportation. The board eventually gave up, realizing the public would never buy the excuse. Eva Marie Saint said, "He made sex look like geometry." The chemistry between her and Grant was electric but strictly controlled. Hitchcock made them rehearse every gesture, every glance. He believed desire should feel choreographed, not spontaneous. The result was sensuality without showing anything. And that brilliance of suggestion defined Hitchcock's genius. But he wasn't done provoking Hollywood yet, because his next stunt would infuriate the US government. Fact 6. When Hitchcock told MGM he wanted to film a chase across the faces of Mount Rushmore, the US government was horrified. The National Park Service said it was disrespectful to national monuments. They banned Hitchcock from filming any violence or stunts directly on the mountain. He was allowed only to shoot static background plates. No climbing, no running, no guns. Hitchcock ignored them completely. His crew built an exact replica of the monument in an MGM studio, down to the tiniest crack in Lincoln's nose. The fake Mount Rushmore was 60 feet tall and cost a fortune. He filmed the chase scenes there in secret, pretending they were harmless inserts. The government eventually found out and threatened to revoke MGM's filming permits. Hitchcock famously responded, "I didn't deface Mount Rushmore, I improved it." The scandal made headlines, and the controversy became free publicity. Audiences were stunned by the illusion of realism. The stunt cemented his reputation as Hollywood's ultimate rule breaker. But that rebellious streak would soon cost him something far more important: his favorite star. Fact 7.
Goodbye, darling.
Before Cary Grant was cast, the role of Roger Thornhill was promised to Jimmy Stewart. Stewart had starred in Vertigo the year before and assumed Hitchcock would call him again. But Hitch thought Stewart looked too old and tired for the fast-paced adventure. Instead of telling him directly, Hitchcock delayed production until Stewart took another job, then hired Grant. Stewart later said he waited by the phone that never rang. The rejection hurt deeply. He never worked with Hitchcock again. Grant, meanwhile, became the perfect replacement: witty, athletic, and impossibly charming. Hitchcock later said, "Cary Grant can do no wrong, even when he's wrong." Ironically, North by Northwest was originally written for Stewart, and many of his nervous, awkward traits remained in the script. The casting change transformed the movie's tone, from anxious to suave. Stewart's loss became cinema's gain, but losing Stewart wasn't Hitchcock's only controversy, because next he turned the FBI itself into an unintentional villain. Fact 8. Shortly after filming began, Hitchcock got a call from an angry government official. They thought North by Northwest was mocking the FBI. The mysterious government agency in the film had no name, no jurisdiction, and no face, which made people assume it was a parody of real intelligence operations. The FBI demanded to see the script, But Hitchcock refused. If they want to know what happens, he said, they can buy a ticket. The tension escalated when MGM's lawyers warned him that his fictional spies were too realistic. Hitchcock laughed it off, calling it a compliment. Ironically, the studio's own marketing department played into the confusion, releasing posters with taglines like, "Secrets even the government doesn't know." FBI agents reportedly attended early screenings to make sure nothing classified was exposed. Nothing was, of course, but the rumor persisted. The controversy made the film feel even more dangerous. Hitchcock had accidentally made a spy movie that scared real spies. But that wasn't the weirdest government encounter on the set, because the CIA had a secret interest too. Fact 9. Years after North by Northwest was released, declassified documents revealed something bizarre. The CIA used it in recruitment training. The agency reportedly screened the film to demonstrate public misconceptions of espionage. They wanted to show new recruits what real spy work wasn't: glamorous, witty, or romantic. Hitchcock's elegant version of intelligence work became a teaching tool. It was part of a Cold War propaganda effort to redefine the image of spies. Ironically, that meant the US government used a movie it once tried to censor. The CIA even studied Hitchcock's use of misinformation, how his characters manipulate truth and identity. One internal memo reportedly said, "We can learn as much from Hollywood's mistakes as from our own." Mendes might have faked a one-shot decades later, but Hitchcock faked a world. The idea of espionage as theater became standard spy training philosophy. It was art imitating life, then life imitating art. And speaking of art, Hitchcock's attention to visual detail bordered on obsession, even in the strangest places. Fact 10.
Hot day.
Seen worse.
Hitchcock believed color could control emotion as much as music. Every hue in North by Northwest was carefully chosen, especially Cary Grant's wardrobe. His iconic gray suit symbolized anonymity, a man fading into the background. The blue and green tones around Eva Marie Saint represented seduction and deceit. Even the hotel sets were painted in pastel yellows to create tension masked as comfort. Hitchcock instructed costume designers to subtly shift Grant's tie color in each scene to reflect his mental state. It wasn't random. It was psychological warfare through fashion. Grant later joked, "I wore one suit for the whole movie, but it had more personality than I did." Hitchcock's mastery of visual cues turned style into storytelling. He called it painting with panic. Scholars now study North by Northwest as a blueprint for cinematic color theory. Every shade tells a story you feel before you understand. But behind that polished surface, chaos ruled the set, because Grant's perfect suit nearly got him killed. Fact 11.
There's something I might tell them. And that's the reason you had this one here hustle me on the train last night.
The crop duster chase looks like Hollywood magic, but parts of it were dangerously real. During one take, the pilot misjudged his distance and swooped far too low. Cary Grant dropped flat into the dirt just seconds before the plane's wheels skimmed over him. Crew members screamed, convinced they just watched the star die. Hitchcock stayed calm and said, "Print it." Grant was furious, but later admitted it looked incredible on screen. The heat, dust, and proximity made the moment feel terrifyingly authentic. Hitchcock didn't use doubles. He wanted audiences to see Grant's fear for real. The dust explosion that follows was detonated manually. No remote triggers, just a man counting down. Afterward, Grant found small stones embedded in his hair and clothes. He told Hitchcock, "Next time I'll direct." The scene's realism made audiences forget it was staged. It became one of cinema's most famous near-death illusions. And it wasn't the last time danger followed Grant, because Hitchcock's obsession with perfection pushed everyone to the edge. Fact 12. By 1959, Alfred Hitchcock was both a genius and a control freak. He trusted no one, not even his own crew. He kept key plot details secret, handing out script pages only on the morning of shooting. He believed mystery created better performances. Even the cast didn't know the full ending. Cary Grant once joked, "I'll find out if I survive when the movie opens." Hitchcock designed sets to prevent actors from improvising. Every step and gesture was pre-planned. He directed like a chess master, moving pieces across a board. He refused to let anyone photograph the fake Mount Rushmore until filming was finished. Studio executives called him the most paranoid man in Hollywood. But that paranoia created flawless precision. He even hid real film reels in a locked vault guarded by armed security, afraid competitors might steal the concept. The secrecy paid off. The audience had no idea what was coming, and that unpredictability became Hitchcock's weapon. But his paranoia didn't stop there. It even invaded his love scenes. Fact 13. The love scene between Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint was almost banned. The Hays Code, Hollywood's morality rulebook, forbade excessive passion. Hitchcock laughed and decided to trick them. He told Saint to whisper the most scandalous things she could think of, even though the camera couldn't pick it up. The result was a performance so sensual that censors assumed it had been rewritten. When they demanded cuts, Hitchcock submitted the same scene again, unchanged, and said he'd fixed it. They approved it without realizing it was identical. The innuendo became legendary, culminating in the final shot of a train entering a tunnel. Critics later called it the dirtiest G-rated moment in history. Hitchcock's use of implication instead of exposure was revolutionary. He proved suggestion was more powerful than display. Saint said, "He made seduction look like conversation." The censors thought they'd won, but Hitchcock always had the last laugh. And his next laugh came from a scene he built around a single piece of architecture, one that nearly ruined him. Fact 14.
Look!
Hitchcock wanted a scene where Grant's character is framed for murder inside the United Nations headquarters, but filming there was strictly forbidden. The UN denied every request, calling it impossible. Hitchcock ignored them and shot the scene anyway. Guerrilla style. He stationed cameras across the street, disguised as tourists. When Grant walks up the UN steps, that's real footage of him sneaking onto the property. Hitchcock later said, "I stole it fair and square." The inside shots were recreated on a soundstage using reference photos. The deception was so perfect that even UN staff thought it had been filmed on site. Diplomats complained, calling it a disgraceful intrusion. MGM feared an international scandal, but Hitchcock loved it. He said controversy was free advertising. The sequence became one of the film's most memorable moments, both thrilling and taboo. But sneaking into the UN wasn't his biggest gamble. That came with the film's breathtaking finale, which almost didn't exist at all. Fact 15. The Mount Rushmore climax is now legendary, but MGM originally wanted it cut. Executives said it was too expensive and too political. Hitchcock refused to compromise. He told them, "If I lose Mount Rushmore, I lose the movie." When the studio demanded a cheaper alternative, he faked a budget estimate showing it would save money. It didn't. Filming was delayed by months as negotiations dragged on. The set construction cost nearly $500,000, the most expensive in MGM's history at the time. Crew members nicknamed it Mount Cashmore. When shooting finally began, technical problems plagued every scene. Actors slipped on the fake rock faces, and lighting rigs overheated constantly. But when Hitchcock saw the edited footage, he knew it was worth it. The scene turned a thriller into myth. It became one of cinema's defining finales. Suspense, romance, and national icons colliding. The studio apologized after audiences went wild, and that moment of triumph would launch Hitchcock into his boldest era yet, one that flirted dangerously with censorship and genius. Fact 16. Like all his movies, Hitchcock appears briefly in North by Northwest, but this cameo is one of his cleverest. It happens just 2 minutes in. He tries to board a bus, but the door closes in his face. The gag set the tone for everything that followed. A man missing his chance, just like Cary Grant's character. Hitchcock loved to appear as a ghost in the machine. He believed his cameos were lucky charms, reminders that he controlled the chaos. Fans began hunting for him in every movie like an Easter egg hunt. He once said, "If they find me, I've done my job too well." Over the years, his cameos became part of his mythology. In North by Northwest, the joke also mirrors his theme of mistaken identity, the wrong man in the wrong place. Some critics even think he's symbolically trapping himself outside his own story. It's small, silent, and perfectly self-aware. Hitchcock called it his signature wink to the audience, but that wink hid a darker truth. Behind the camera, he was terrified his formula was wearing thin. Fact 17. By 1959, Hitchcock feared he was running out of ideas. Vertigo had flopped critically, and Psycho was still just a dream. He told friends North by Northwest might be my last masterpiece. He poured everything into it: humor, romance, danger, and deception. It was meant to be the ultimate Hitchcock experience. The pressure was crushing. He became obsessed with pacing, watching rough cuts over 200 times. There must not be a single wasted second, he told his editor. The perfectionism exhausted his crew, but it worked. Every frame pulses with energy. When the film finally premiered, the audience erupted in applause. Critics hailed it as a return to form. Hitchcock wept privately that night, relieved he wasn't finished after all. The movie revived his reputation and confidence, but it also reignited something darker: his fascination with paranoia. And that paranoia would define his next creation, one far more disturbing than North by Northwest. Fact 18. Before North by Northwest, spy movies were slow and serious, all dialogue and no danger. Hitchcock changed everything. He turned espionage into entertainment, glamorous, fast, and ironic. The ordinary man mistaken for a spy became a template for decades of thrillers. Without it, there would be no James Bond, Mission Impossible, or The Bourne Identity. Ian Fleming even admitted Hitchcock's influence when shaping 007's world of suave chaos. The blend of wit and danger became the new cinematic language for espionage. Hitchcock created the first action hero who doesn't know he's in an action movie. Cary Grant's charm under fire became the model for every secret agent to follow. Even the gadgets and global chases owe him credit. Film schools still teach North by Northwest as the blueprint for spy cinema. It was thrilling, funny, and frightening all at once. A balance few have matched since. And ironically, its success came from something Hitchcock once swore he'd never do again: shoot an ending that feels too happy to be true. Fact 19. The last image of North by Northwest, Cary Grant pulling Eva Marie Saint into a train bed as it tunnels through a mountain, isn't just romance. It's one of Hitchcock's dirtiest jokes. The studio wanted a wholesome finale, but Hitchcock had other plans. He added the shot without telling censors, calling it a gesture of completion. When the train enters the tunnel, audiences laughed, but many didn't realize why. It was a masterclass in subtext, pure innuendo disguised as innocence. Hitchcock once said, "Always end with a climax." The Hayes office missed the meaning completely and approved the scene. Decades later, film scholars hailed it as the greatest visual punchline in history. The shot symbolized everything about Hitchcock: elegant, wicked, and precise. He could outsmart the system with a single frame. And as cheeky as that moment was, it marked something much bigger: the dawn of Hitchcock's global superstardom. Fact 20. After North by Northwest, Hitchcock became more than a director. He became a brand. His silhouette, voice, and name were instantly recognizable around the world. The movie's success turned him into the first auteur celebrity, known as much for his image as his films. TV networks begged him to host shows. Merchandising deals appeared. His face sold mystery novels and board games. Hitchcock now belonged to pop culture, not just cinema. The phrase "master of suspense" became his permanent title. Yet he remained haunted by North by Northwest perfection, fearing he'd never top it. "It's my Mount Everest," he said. Ironically, it gave him the courage to take his biggest risk yet: a small black and white horror film called Psycho. The film that began as a joke ended up changing the world, and its legacy still defines how thrillers are made today. Because Hitchcock didn't just make movies, he made us love being afraid.